I'm Dr. Mohammad Rafi, Associate Professor, Department of Cybersecurity at Institute of Aeronautical Engineering. Today I want to discuss about network, the programming and management subject, in which the topic is multiplexing TCP and UDP sockets. Here, what is a multiplexing? Before going to TCP UDP multiplexing socket, first we have to discuss about what is a multiplexing. Here, multiplexing means it is a method. It is method used in a telecommunication and network the programming to combining the multiple data streams into a single stream. That means multiple inputs can be considered and producing as a single output. So that is a multiplexing. Here is one common way to achieving the multiplexing of a socket is by using select, pole and e-pole. That means select by using the system call, the select, pole and e-pole system calls. By using these three system calls, now we can achieve the multiplexing. Selecting means whatever the device you want for communication or programming, we are the selecting. That means selecting the multiple devices. It is a device 1, device other 2 and device other 3 up to dash n number of devices. Now by using the select the function, the multiplexing, in a multiplexing it can be achieved by using the select function call. That is a system call. That should be depends on the operating system. What operating system you are using, whether Linux operating system you are using or Unix operating system you are using, depends upon the select operating system. These system calls, these are the calls, select, pole, e-pole, the system calls implement, achieve the multiplexing along with non-blocking sockets. Here is select system call now, which is the selecting the multiple inputs from the multiple other devices into a single streaming now, which is the producing it as a single the output. The inputs are multiple inputs. Here it is a input 1 and input 2 and input 3 and up to dash input here. The n number of inputs now, selecting n number of inputs and producing a single output. So it is the meaning of the multiplexing. So that is depends upon this multiplexing. It is depends upon the operating system. What operating system we are using, whether we are using the Unix operating system or Linux operating system or Macintosh operating system, depends upon that. Now we are selecting the multiple inputs and combined it is as a single output. So with a non-blocking socket technology. The polling. So with the polling also, now we are achieving the multiplexing. The polling with polling method, this multiplexing method, now we can achieve the multiplexing multiplexing. This can be achieved, and event polling also. Polling system calls and event polling system calls. Now we can establish the communication there between the devices, between many devices to the single device, or many device to many other devices, one device to another other device. Generally here the multiplexing can be achieved. But here in multiplexing TCP UDP sockets, That means the meaning of the TCP UDP socket means with help of the transmission control protocols and UDP protocols. These are the multiplexing can be achieved. Socket means here at every client side. Now generally the sockets can be arranged at a client side and server side also. Now we can arrange the sockets. Client side and server side we can arrange the socket. So with the help of these other sockets, now we can receiving the information or we can sending the information. Here, while communicating, while doing these the signaling, streaming, see multiple signals to single signal or the streaming. Now we are utilizing the TCP and UDP socket. If you use the TCP as a socket now, so it is a transmission control protocol. That means connection oriented protocol. And if you use the UDP socket means here it is a connection less sockets. That means connection user datagram protocol is a connection less protocol. So like this now we are establish the communication between the two other devices. Generally it is utilized these TCP sockets and UDP sockets, multiplexing TCP sockets and multiplexing UDP sockets. Generally, we are utilizing in any other telecommunication organizations or computer or the network or in a network the programming. Generally, these TCP and UDP sockets can be utilized. So this is about the multiplexing and TCP UDP sockets. How can you utilize? And if you come to the multiplexing TCP and UDP sockets in a network programming, so which is involving the efficiently managing multiple connections. So multiplexing in the means here, which is connected to the multiple devices, n number of devices. Here the system now, which is the system is connected to the n number of devices, 1, 2, 3 up to dash n number of devices now which can be connected, and which is managing multiple other connections can be managed with help of this multiplexing the technology and handling the input output operations. Whatever the input operations now we are receiving from the multiple other clients, those input operations can be handled with help of the multiplexing the TCP, and output other operations after multiplexing. Now we are producing the single streaming signals. So the output operations also which can be managed with this technique on these other sockets without the blocking of the transformations. Signaling now generally in a communication, telecommunication or network, the programming, the communication generally here over the network now, the signals now, the packet signals now we are sending the packet signals from one device to the another device, number of n number of the packets now we are sending. So these input the packets and delivered the output packets, whatever the output packets now we are delivering, these the input and output packets can be controlled without the blocking. So this is the multiplexing TCP and UDP sockets now we can achieve in a network programming. Here there are several other techniques can be utilized for multiplexing TCP and UDP sockets. Here some of the common techniques are select based multiplexing. That is select you are using. Select means here the signal, which are the signal you are selecting for multiplexing purpose. That is a select based multiplexing. So these are the technique. Generally select based multiplexing technique now we are utilizing the system calls. That is select function. System calls means how you are utilizing select system call functions. With these select system call functions, what we are doing now, we are monitoring the multiple sockets for readability. How you are monitoring the multiple socket means these are the functions. Select a system call function. Now, which is selecting the devices, number of other devices, whatever the devices now we have selected. Now, which is the monitoring the multiple sockets. Why? Because here this number of other sockets can be arranged at each and every device. Here is if it is a device 1, now we can arrange the one socket, and device 2 will arrange the another socket, and device 3 we can arrange the another socket, at device 4 we can arrange the another socket. Number of other sockets, how many, whatever the sockets we are arranging, multiple sockets that can be monitored for readability, writability operations, and exceptional operations. That means here these are the readability operations now, which is reading the content, which is reading the information, and writability operations now, which is monitor how much the information you are writing, and exceptions, it is there if is there while reading, while performing reading writing operations, if any errors are arised while reading and writing, that can be handled. That means now which is handling the input output of the exceptions also. Here generally it allows a single thread to handle the multiple sockets concurrently. So by blocking until one or more sockets are ready for input output operations. That means here what is happening is a single flow of control. In a multi-socket, multiple sockets are concurrently you are selecting. So that means the flow of control should be the single flow of the control. So that can be blocking until one or more sockets are ready for input output operation. If these sockets, whatever the sockets now we are utilizing, if it is ready for input output operation, that means ready for reading or ready for output, ready for writing. That means reading is nothing but here we can say it as a input operation. So reading is nothing but it is a input operation, and writing here now we can say it as a writability. It is a output operation. Input operation, output operation. So that can be which indicates which are the ready for the more other sockets. So up to that now, so the concurrent multiple other sockets concurrently perform the operations. That can be done with help of the selector based multiplexing. Here pole based multiplexing. Pole based means here the polling based multiplexing. Polling based multiplexing. Here the device, the select, now it is similar to the selector, but in a polling, in a selector what we are doing, selected the all sockets for communication establishment. But the pole based multiplexing. What is a pole based multiplexing? So based on specific device, now we are not selecting all socket devices, only the specific device. Here, for example, here if you take device 1, device 2, device 3, and up to show n number of other devices. Here, in this the pole based method, the server, now if you take the server, in a server, here the polling in this the polling now, the specified device only we are selecting. The specified device only we are selecting through this polling technique. Here, this polling system call, this is the polling system call is used to monitoring the multiple file descriptors. Here the file the descriptors now, which is the monitoring. File descriptors, multiple meaning of the multiple file descriptors means here this multiple file descriptor is nothing but here it is a file descriptor is a one event, it is a one value now which is opening the socket or which is opening the file or which is reading, which is perform the reading writing the operations from the input output. Here which including the sockets for events. Whatever the events we are using, now we are including the sockets. It provides more scalability and comparing to the select and can handle a large number of file descriptors efficiently. Next, e-pole based multiplexing. E-pole based multiplexing now which is available generally on a Linux operating system. E-pole multiplexing, so it is a high performance, generally it is used in a high performance network applications. Here e-pole is a scalable input output event notification mechanisms. Why? Because now why it is scalable for input output event the notification mechanism, that means now it can be utilized, this system call can be utilized in a high performance networking devices only. That means any video conferencing, online gaming, these are all the high performance networking. So it offers the better performance than the select and poll. Here if you take the select and poll, comparing with the select and poll, these select and poll can be utilized in a simple network. The performance is very less than the e-poll system call. Why? Because e-poll is used in a high complicated networking system and select and poll can be utilized. These system calls can be utilized in a simple networkings. Particularly when dealing with a large number of other sockets, e-poll which allows both edge triggered and level triggered modes. So this is about the e-poll based multiplexing. E-poll based multiplexing, it is a better than select and poll the system calls. Here in a network of the programming, in a computer networking, and trigger, edge trigger which initiating the data transmission. Upon the detecting a specific the change in a signal state. Whereas a level triggering which is sending the continuously as long as a signal remains at a certain level. For example, if you switch on the light, while switch on, that means here now which is initiating the transmitting data, transmitting signal transmitting. If you switch on the light, so in a board, electrical board, just if you switch on the light, once while switch on, holding your the finger on this switch the board, immediately which is initiating the data transmission. So that is a edge trigger. And level triggering. Level triggering now, which is level triggering means continuously flowing the signals. Continuously flowing the signals from switchboard to the bulb, electrical bulb, switchboard to the electrical bulb, continuously flowing. So that is a level triggering. Edge triggering only shows the initially which shows the flowing the direction only. But a level triggering here which continuously flowing the data the transmission over the network. So this is a triggering levels in a network the programming. And so next one is a asynchronous input output. Asynchronous input output, that means synchronous asynchronous. At a time the operations can be performed in a synchronous. Asynchronous means here, so we can't perform the at a time operations. So one by one now can perform the operations. Now one by one means here, so we can receive the data through the keyboard. Through the keyboard. After receiving the data, now we are sending the data to the CPU. We are sending the data to the CPU. Some time delay will be there. Here in a asynchronous transmission, so the device will taking the time for performing task task onto the other task. That means task to task which is taking the time delay. That is a asynchronous input operations and input and output operations can be performed asynchronously. So here this AIO so is an operating system. So it is an operating system feature. AIO, asynchronous input output, is a operating system feature. That means it may be any operating system, Linux operating system or Windows operating system. Now in both the Linux and Windows now, we are considering the asynchronous IO as one of the most important feature. Why? Because now these allow the input output operations to perform the asynchronously. So meaning that here the calling thread can continue the executions while the input output operations is being processed. Here is about the input asynchronous input and output. And thread-based multiplexing. Thread-based multiplexing, so instead of using the single thread to managing the multiple sockets in a single socket, single thread here to managing multiple socket, now we can receive the multiple informations or multiple other messages. Here in this is multi-flexing into the single stream of the message or single stream of the signals. So generally these the approach involves creating a separate thread for each of the socket. Each thread is responsible for handling the input output operations for its respective sockets. Event driven architecture. So in event driven architecture, callbacks or event handlers are used to handle the input output events. Input output events now generally it can be handled by using the callback or event handlers. So this approach is a common in a network framing and libraries designing for high performance network applications. It allows the high performance network applications now. In this high performance network application now, which allowing for the efficiently handling the input output events, any input output events without the overloading or overhead of managing the threads or system calls directly. That means select system call or poll system calls or ePoll system calls now, which is managing or which is controlling to handling the select system call or poll system call and ePoll system call. ePoll system call that means here, so ePoll means here event polling, the polling system calls. This is about the event driven architecture. And online multiplayer game, live video conferencing, and autonomous vehicle communication networks. These are all the real-time examples of the high performance network applications. Event polling is often preferred for high performance network applications on Linux operating system. By selecting or poll by the it is a suitable select poll functions system calls are suitable for the simple applications. That means here now simple application networks, not high the performance the network, not the complicated networks. Generally here ePoll can be utilized in a high performance network applications. But is a select and poll, that can be utilized in a simple networking applications. Networking applications should be the very simple application. Simple networking application now generally it can be used in a simple networking applications. Simple networking applications. So now in these the applications we can utilize the select and poll the system calls. So with fewer concurrent other connections. Here the simple network applications now which is having the concurrent connections are very less. So in a ePoll system calls, if you are utilizing the ePoll system calls, now these the network having the many concurrent other connections, many parallel connections. Why? Because in the sense of meaning of the multiplexing means merely many parallel connections can be utilized and handled. And that whatever the signals now we have multiplexed that can be converted into the single stream of messages or information. Here real-time applications of the multiplexing TCP and UDP socket. Now network server, if we take the network server, multiplexing TCP and UDP sockets, it is very common in a network servers to handle the incoming client other connections. For example, web server may use the TCP sockets to handling the HTTP request, hypertext transmission protocol request, web server on a web server. While simultaneously using the UDP sockets for services like DNS, resolutions or real-time other communication protocols such as real-time transport protocols. So network server it is TCP UDP multiplexing sockets can be utilized in a network servers, and it can be utilized in a voice over internet protocol. Voice over internet protocol application generally here it is utilized for both TCP and UDP socket for different aspect of the communication. The communications are different. Except mobile communication. Suppose here we use one communication is a mobile communication, another communication that means networking, any client to server communication. That is aspects of the different aspects of the communication. For TCP may be utilized for signaling and controlling messages. And UDP, it may be utilized for transmitting the voice data. That means the communications are different communications. Here, it is a lower the latency and real-time the requirements. That's why the multiplexing TCP UDP sockets, which allowing the voice over internet the protocol applications to efficiently manage both type of traffic within the same applications. Here is next the application, real-time application is a online gaming, multiplayer online gaming. So that can be, it is a combination of the TCP and UDP for different game features, transmission control protocol and UDP user datagram protocol for the different game other features. TCP may be used for the critical game state synchronization and reliability, and UDP it is used for the real-time player movement and actions to minimizing the latency. Here is next real-time application is streaming media. Streaming media it is a service, so such as the video streaming or audio streaming. So in that also we are using the multiplexing TCP and UDP sockets here. So it is may use the combination of the TCP and UDP for delivering the content to the end users. Here whatever the content, that means video streaming content or audio streaming content. So these are the content can be delivered to the end users. TCP can be used for initial connection setups, metadata exchange and reliability delivery of the data. And here the UDP is used for streaming media content due to its lower overhead and real-time the requirements. This is about the streaming media. Next, IoT, Internet of Things. Internet of Things is the most the modern technology nowadays. Now we are using for communicating devices with the central service, both by using the TCP and UDP for various other purposes, such as device management and data collection and firmware the updates, multiplexing TCP and UDP sockets, which allow IoT gateways for services for servers to handling the diversity communication requirements. Diversity communication requirement handling. That means here we are receiving the signal different devices. So if you receive the from different other devices or different other networking, now we are saying it as a diverse communication. Diverse different network. This is one network. This one is another network. These two are the different network. Okay, so if you now we can easily handle by using the IoT the devices, the IoT gateway, the server too. By using that one here, now easily we can handling the diverse communication requirements for a large number of the IoT devices efficiently. And network monitoring and management. Network monitoring and management of the system now, which is needed to collecting the data from multiple other sources, such as simple network management protocol for the device status and system log for event logging and custom protocols, any protocols, TCP, UDP, any HTTP protocols, any other custom protocols for performing the monitoring. That means here whether the data is performing the monitoring, the data is correctly receiving or not. Here is the multiplexing TCP UDP sockets enable these other systems to concurrently monitor and manage the diverse network element. Diverse network element that means different networks, different network elements. If it is monitoring and managing different network elements, that means now we can say it as a diverse network elements using the different the protocols. Now we can use it. Depends upon the communication. Depends upon the network the communication. Now we can utilize the different protocols can be utilized. Here in all these the application, real-time applications, multiplexing TCP and UDP sockets which helps to optimizing the resources usage and improving the scalability and ensures efficient handling of the diverse type of the network traffic within the same application or server infrastructure or over the same network also. So all these the applications can be utilized like this. Here the objective of the multiplexing TCP and UDP socket means here we are achieve the efficient management of concurrent TCP UDP connections within a single application. And next objective is optimizes the resource utilizations by multiplexing the multiple socket other connections. By multiple socket other connections, now increasing the resource the utilizations effective the communication can be established and minimizing the latency and maximizing the throughput by handling the diverse network. Diverse network means different networks, different network traffic type concurrently. Here is which ensures scalability to support a large number of the simultaneous the TCP and UDP connections. These are the main objectives of multiplexing TCP and UDP sockets, and which enabling the seamless integration of TCP UDP based services within a unified networking solutions. So these facilitate the real-time communication and data exchange across the heterogeneous network protocols and which enhancing the responsiveness and the performance in a network applications through the effective multiplexing strategy, which is providing the robustness and reliability in handling the TCP and UDP socket other connections under a different network other conditions and different network condition and various network other conditions. So outcome of multiplexing TCP UDP socket is which is improved scalability and resource utilization, allowing the applications to efficiently handle a large number of the concurrent TCP and UDP connections. Now, which is enhancing the network the performance and the responsiveness through the optimized management of the diverse type of the network traffic within a single applications. Reduce the latency and improve throughput by minimizing the overhead associated with the managing multiple socket the connections. The seamless integration of TCP and UDP based services, which is enabling the flexible and efficient communication across the different networking protocols within a same application. Here, these are all the textbooks and reference books and web references. Unix network programming, network management principles, these are the textbooks, and a networking with TCP IP, volume 3, that is a base BSD socket, the versions. Here is William Stalin, SNMP, SNMP2, SNMP3, these are all the reference the books and web references, meaning web reference. This is about the multiplexing TCP and UDP sockets.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.